Um, for me, like doing things like consistently exercising keeps me calm, um, and having an artistic practice keeps me really calm. And I do think with producing, if you have like, not all producers have to be like this, obviously, but for me, having a practice is like really important because it helps you never forget the perspective of what it's like being the artist in the room. And I think it's like a grave mistake when um, I'm not trying to like, name names or whatever, but like, my French is pretty bad at the moment. I haven't practiced in the sense of being in France, having to talk to French people since like 2018, 2019, because it's just before COVID.
Tell me about creating in France.
Well, for context,
What were you working on?
my friend and I had a band / still have a band. It's vague, called Saint Leon, and my friend's name is Ryan Nicolucci. We actually met in Sydney in the like 2000s indie scene, as funny as it sounds. And then he moved to London with his partner and my other friend, Emily. And then we started a band between London and Sydney, which is like pretty insane trying to do. But it had like a certain set of limitations and parameters that I quite enjoy having with creative projects. And so we would meet in France.
What were the limitations?
Well, in the sense, in time, like we'd only record together in the sense of like record final vocals and things. So we'd try to get as much done in the limited time we would have together as possible. And then I suppose limitations in the sense that Ryan was, even though he's actually one of the most talented multidisciplinary musicians I've ever met, he like very much wanted to just be the singer. And I don't mean just the singer, but like he's always been the singer, songwriter, guitarist, pianist in his other projects. And he really liked the challenge of just having all of this music that was like quite exploratory and all over the place that I was making, and like producing in solo, and then learning how to sing on it. And so I would do things like, we discovered like a different part of his vocal register that he never used before. So he has a voice that like has like a Jeff Buckley style range. And then we'd go and found this register that we really liked that was just before he'd hit falsetto. So it was like really high. And it had this like kind of fragility. I'd always call it the Daniel Johns voice because he literally did sound like Daniel Johns. And it's like, and then I started like, I love Silverchair, like unabashedly, and the Dissociatives. Shout out Paul Mac. And yeah, it was just like had this like eerie kind of like fragility to it without it being like we are doing the fragile song, like in, without being too kind of like cliched about it. But yeah, that all of that music was very inspired by like 80s songwriting, like Talk Talk and Tears for Fears, and like kind of like using complexity in like music theory and arranging, but distilling it in a simple way, which I feel like is like kind of not done a lot. So I learned a lot.
Were you kind of coming at it from like a lot of what you just said was the technical things that you were working through, but like what was creatively and conceptually, what was Saint Leon?
It was like very much like sad boy longing was the vibe. But also it was like I needed, and like I mean that like in jest, but also kind of semi-seriously. And like longing for friendship, not just like romantic, or like longing for like doing something with your life, things like that. And because it was so absurd doing a band with someone in London, it just meant you had to like try doubly hard. Like you really had to want to do it for its own sake. Like, you know, we're not going to become like, and nor are we trying to become like a huge band or anything, but we're doing it because like it's a way of maintaining friendship, which I think a lot of my best relationships are just like making things with people. Like it's a way of living, not so much a way of making a living, which are like super separate things for me. And I kind of like it that way. It wasn't always the case.
Yeah. What was it before that?
Well, before that, like I was a producer and like slash curator person at the Opera House, which was like amazing and stuff. And I did that for 10 years, and that's a whole bunch of different stories and like amazing people. But with respect to like making music, I always found it tricky because I've took having like a position of power curatorially pretty seriously. I say that because not all people do. And so I felt it was slightly conflicting with making music in the sense that I was maybe overthinking kind of ideas around promoting it and like putting it out and things like that, because I was like, well, I'm already like I'm the one with like the keys of like who gets opportunities and who doesn't a lot of the time. So why should I be necessarily taking up space on like a radio playlist or a stage and things like that? And you just go around in circles with that type of thing. But I guess the end point, which I still maintain, is like it's really important for me to finish things and put them out, because I'm someone who like judges art and music all the time. And I think if you can like make things, you need to put your money where your mouth is and put it up and put it out yourself in some shape or form to be critiqued and like be part of the conversation.
Is there a fear for that?
No, I like love putting things out. I mean, most of the time, let's be honest, like most of the time it's like I'm not making these projects that are going to be like huge or anything and have like huge sways of like praise or disdain. But I think like being a somewhat public figure as like a curator and for like a major institution or and a producer, like you're kind of like there's more to be lost than to be gained if you look at it from like a social capital point of view. I know this is getting like esoteric, but like I don't really care about social capital at all. It's just not important to me. I love money. Money's great. Give me money. I'd rather have the money than the social capital. You know, I love my friends and they like look at me. I'm crazy, clearly. And I just like don't really care about what most people think, because the people who know me, I think, know my intentions and my inspirations and where I'm coming from. But also like there's plenty of people who I thought hate me, and either they don't hate me or never did, or life is long and people come around to each other, including me. Like even with art and music, like there's so many times that I like really dislike something the first time I experience it, and then have a complete 180 like 2 weeks later. And I like being wrong about things. And that's kind of something like that I think in the current like socio-political climate, like people are like afraid to be wrong and are very defensive in their views, or like feel like they need to be presenting their definitive view all the time. And like I feel like everything is always changing with me. Like I like to live my life in a complete state of transience, not in a sense of like I don't know where I'm going to sleep at night, but I kind of like live quite a weirdly disciplined life, so I can be creatively and artistically and like sensitively attuned to everything that's going on and change. Like I think changing is really important.
Can we jump back to France?
Yeah, sorry.
And no,
yeah,
no, that's
this
okay.
is like I jump around a lot.
That's the vibe. I'll cut in and ask questions when I feel like I need to. But so you were making the record between here and London,
Yeah,
and then
we would meet up in France.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then those times were like really fun because we would just like hang out nonstop for like whatever it is, just under a week sometimes. So it's a pretty short amount of time drink heaps of wine, make heaps of music, like write lyrics together, come up with melodies. Like some of it's like really on the fly, and then some of it's already like pretty formalized.
Were you like on the tools as well, or
Yeah,
like,
so I'd have like a little Pro Tools set up. I had some instruments there too, but I would generally just try to bring everything in, and then invariably, like all the music would change around the vocals, because Ryan's voice is like was and is so amazing that it was a big learning curve for me to like learn how to strip back and like create space. And I think that's something that a lot of people maybe struggle with when they start producing music. Um, but there's that cliche of like, you do something for 10,000 hours and then you get it. And I think Saint Leon and making all of that music in the discipline of like, I would make music pretty much every day. Like I had to be maximal and explore like every corner of how something could be done to like be able to like have maturity is the wrong word, but just like have a greater understanding of how things sit musically for a singer to be able to sing on something firstly, and then secondly like as a listener, because when you're in the middle of making something, whether it's like it can be music, visual art, it could be you could be a producer in an organization, like it you can get a bit lost in the weeds sometimes. And like there's nothing wrong with maximalism there. But I think I've just that project really clearly to me, like from the beginning of it to like the last songs that we just mixed. I think a year ago we mixed them with John Boy, who I should probably talk about at some point. Like the growth was like pretty obvious to me.
yeah, was this within the like kind of timeline of stuff you've worked on? Where is Saint Leon? Was it like your second or third kind of?
I get a bit lost in time sometimes. I reckon it was like, well, I remember I was doing a band Lortica in 2016. So, or maybe that just finished. I think it was from around, yeah, it was from around 2016. Yeah, because 2016 was like my wild year. I've had a few wild times, and that was like a big wild time where I did like a lot of crazy freelance things, and my band had broken up, and I was making all this music, like my previous band. But yeah, like Jackie Chan, Renee Redzepi, Noma, Shia LaBeouf, and doing Saint Leon were like the things that like take up my brain. And we were living together for a bit in 2016. So 2016 is like really clear to me because it was the year of like a lot of crazy things back to back.
Yes, it was. Was talk to me about like the Saint Leon, that first album or EP.
I don't know what it is because essentially we finished it and then COVID hit. And every year we would either come to Australia and play some shows, or I would go to Europe and we'd play shows. And being taken out of that cycle wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, COVID was actually really, I'm lucky to say COVID and lockdown was really good for me in a lot of ways. But I think that first record was very much learning how to make music. Like I listen to it and it's like exciting to me in the sense that I wouldn't make music that way. Maybe I could never make music that way again. But it's really pushing at the edges of what I could and couldn't do. And then during lockdown, John Boy and I, so John Boy Gardner is an audio engineer, who like hilariously I met when my previous band before that was called Lolux, and we were going to go into a studio and record a single. And he came to our rehearsal like 2 weeks beforehand to hear kind of what we were doing. And the whole band like imploded essentially in front of him.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and that was the first time we had met. And then He was also like a freelance audio engineer at the Opera House, so I'd bump into him every now and again, and we'd just talk about music, and we really got along. And he's like one of my best friends now. And then we started kind of mixing some new stuff that I just recorded with Ryan. Uh, I think, yeah, in Saint Leon. And then this was like clear cut going to be a different album because the way we were mixing was almost like this obviously is not dub reggae, but the way we were editing and arranging was essentially like that kind of extreme form of remixing.
Sure, that's what I wanted to ask about. Actually, is like what is the difference between the mixing that you were doing on the first album versus the
On the
newer
first
stuff?
album, it was a more traditional relationship where it did bleed out from my last band, Lolux. And I think like for me, like that's the nature of creative projects for me. Like the best projects that I do is when it's slightly out of my control and things just happen. And I always thought I was like, always felt like, not in a poor me kind of way, but I always felt like a bit of a loner. Um, like growing up, I felt pretty alone, and then that extended to like having this weird kind of like amazing but weird position, like having a really like pretty powerful job at the Opera House um, at a fairly youngish age. Like, lucky me, obviously, it's a pretty privileged position to be in. Um, but then also like making all this music and stuff, and then kind of over time, I've definitely realized that I've always worked with people and loved making with people. And maybe it's those producing instincts from like an events point of view have always been part of the way I've made music. But back to kind of that transition from Lolux to Saint Leon, there's an audio engineer called Tim Witten. I was going to say Tim Winton. He definitely ain't from Cloud Street. Tim Witten, who again an audio engineer who I'd been to the studio with to do 2 Lolux songs. He had worked with Bridezilla, and the singer of Lolux was from Bridezilla, so that's how that happened. And then we kind of toured with him around Australia a little bit, and we did and still get along really really well. Like he like toured with like I think like recorded with the Go Betweens and stuff. Like one of his first like touring jobs was for the Smiths, like when they were like actually a band. Um, and he's like, I think maybe he's most famously like the next go-to guy. Like he does all their live shows, he engineers all their records, and we just like get on like a house on fire. Like he's pretty eccentric guy, like in a really good way. And actually, like a bit older as well. And John Boy's a little bit older than me, so it's not like a daddy issue thing because we'll get into my getting into my issues with my dad is a separate thing. Just joking.
How would you describe like your job on the records, like on as a songwriter, music maker,
like
producer?
on any specific records?
Like I'm specifically trying to get to like I wanted to like I guess pick apart the relationship between like how you were working and working with an audio engineer and get you to explain that. So like
well,
figuring
with
out
Tim,
like,
for
what your
example,
job was and then going what their role is.
well, actually, that was like a big point of contention for a minute in Lolux because in Lolux I was like slightly jack of all trades, but definitely master of none. So I'd play guitar, and I started out in that band playing Daisy's guitar part so she could just sing. And then I started playing some keys as well. And then I'd kind of use it as an opportunity to bring in some electronic elements. And Daisy and I were both like super into, like, I know electronic music is broad, but like at the time we were really into the first 100 Waters album, or it's the second 100 Waters album, the one called The Moon and the Melodies or whatever. I think that's a Cocteau Twins album. Anyway, the second 100 Waters album is like amazing. And just the way they used like electronics in like a very like live group context was exciting to us. So we're incorporating bits of that. And so when we went into the studio to record those two singles, there were moments where I wanted to add like little electronic bits, or I wanted to like take the session home and like do stuff. And like, this is no disrespect to my band members, it's just a different philosophy. They very much wanted like the more traditional band in a room kind of thing, which I've never really been like that. But that was kind of the beginning of me and Tim realizing that like Tim and I like philosophically were quite connected, because he actually really like vouched for me to be able to do those things, and like had a lot of faith in my, and like I'm annoying as all hell, because like that stuff takes time, right? Like it takes time to like do that stuff live. It's like lots of cables and things, and like things go wrong with computers all the time. And he was just always like really patient and supportive of those things. So then going into like Low Lux imploding dramatically, great. Love it when bands have dramatic breakups. Then Tim mixed the first Saint Leon album, which was like maxed out on Pro Tools, number of tracks kind of thing, and did like an amazing job. And then there was no like conscious reason to stop like working with Tim. Like we still catch up, and we might work on stuff together in the future. But John Boy and I started kind of mixing at his home studio. And when we say mixing, it's like kind of editing, mixing, listening to music. Like it was pretty like broad, just hanging out whilst doing stuff. And what the line was between mixing and rearranging versus just having a beer, like, was like completely blurred, which was awesome. And because he like also worked at the Opera House in a completely different capacity, he kind of understood the kind of like absurdity around that institution. So it was like really fun just hanging out. And I was like having a pretty bad time in my life, like to do with like all sorts of things, which is why COVID lockdown was really good for me. And then he and I just kind of like really connected, like spiritually and musically and like philosophically, like in a really close way. And so once like lockdown kicked in again, he lived alone. He was able to like, I was able to be like his other person or whatever. So we hung out like heaps. It was great, and made heaps of music and stuff.
Yeah. So that relationship between like how would you define what are you a songwriter, music maker? What would you call yourself?
Like for a really long time, only until recently, I wouldn't even say like I was a musician or an artist. I would just say like I make music. And I think it was to do with some of those hang-ups beforehand. But since I've completely separated like my work and music stuff, I would just say like I'm a musician. Like sometimes I'm a producer, sometimes I am the glue guy, like sometimes I am the guitarist, even though that's like, I don't even know how to play guitar properly. It really just depends on the project, which, is kind of the way I have to do things. Like I can't just do one thing. Like, and it might drive people crazy, like my wife. But no, it doesn't drive her crazy.
Is there a song off the first Saint Leon album that sort of exemplifies that like original mixing style?
Yeah, I think there's a song called Day of a Drum Major. Yeah, sure. It's really long, but that really like I was really trying to like nail this maximal / drony atmosphere. I was really influenced by TV on the radio at the time.
It's Signs of Saint Leon.
Yeah, so that's the album. Yeah.
All right. We'll listen and then break it down for me.
Wow. Okay.
Tell me about that one.
Well, I actually forgot everything about it, but then listening to it, I remember the initial idea was I wanted to create a song that was based around one riff, and that like no 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 guitar line. I'd had that since my first band had broken up, like first band ever, and I wrote it after that. But then I was just holding on to it for ages because I didn't have like the context for it. And then I was like, okay, this is it. And so that whole song arrangement is just exploring like how long can you just play like something as simple as that, and where can it go?
Okay,
And I
like
think
almost
change,
a meditation on it.
yeah, and it changes. The notes change like once for like a little middle eight, um, but that's still the same rhythm. Um, yeah.
And how long? How long before between your like writing that riff and like the realizing of the song?
Um, like 7 or 8 years. Yeah. But on the next Saint Leon album, there's a piano riff that I had from even earlier, from when I learned piano when I was a kid, and that like, well, the funny thing is the piano riff ended up getting taken out, um, and the song remains, which is the important bit. But yeah, I tend to like sometimes hang on to like little ideas like that until they feel like the right time. Obviously, like at some point you just run out of those little motifs, but um, I think like when you're noodling on like an instrument, like whether it's piano or guitar, or whatever, like those things just come out. I feel like that's for most people, maybe not. Maybe for people who don't write music, like that doesn't happen. But I'm the opposite. Like I can never play covers. Like to save me, like I can't play a cover, but I can always like write a night. I'm never worried about running out of ideas.
Where like how does that process for you happen?
Like coming up with ideas.
Like the pulling out the guitar, sitting down.
I
What
rarely
is
do
that?
it. Do it. It depends what I'm kind of working on and what headspace I'm in. Like I have a number of different projects. So like for Worlds Only, I very much come in with guitar, like motifs, but that band revolves around improvisation. So I just try to come like prepared with some motifs that I think are interesting, with no desire to force them to happen. Um, with a band like Deep Phase One, which is all electronic and I make all the music, kind of similar to the way Saint Leon works. I don't use like traditional instruments at all. Like I just set up with like a laptop and like a little MIDI keyboard, and I prefer to just work off like different samples and things that I think sound interesting, and just try to create something interesting really quickly.
In day with a drum major, was there like any real instruments in there?
Yeah, I played guitar, bass guitar. Marcus Well played saxophone. I played a lot of keyboards. I wasn't like a great player. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a great player or anything, but like now I can like through doing Saint Leon, I really learned how to like play bass and like push and like pull back a beat and push and pull with groove and things. And back then I was like chopping I kind of say the shit. I was like chopping the shit up of like that bass. Like it would almost be like aligned on like the grid. I was like very like grid oriented, and I really wanted everything to be like really precise like that. So because there's so much going on, I felt like it was kind of necessary. Um, Whereas now, like I can definitely like play through a song, and I much prefer doing it this way now because it's also faster. But I think through doing Saint Leon, I've learned much more about like arrangement and changing the feel of a performance or a song through playing faster or slowing down, etc. And like frequency range is like so important as well.
Explain frequency range to me.
So frequency range is like the lowest sound. So like it's usually like what comes out of the subs, the things that vibrate. The things that it's the thing that gets people going in a club. Like let's be honest. Like it's the sexy low end stuff. And then your mid range is like this is super simple, but like the mid range is kind of the stuff that like literally sits in the middle. So that's usually your like piano like has all of it, but it's the middle of the piano is the best way I could describe that. And then the very top end of the range is like the sound of a triangle. It's like super high pitched. The things that like make you like kind of like wince a little bit is usually like super high frequencies. And then there's things that's in the middle. So like sit in between, sorry. So like a bass guitar, like you can make it like hit like subs, but it's like low end, but it also has like high end elements, and most instruments have some form of mix of kind of jumping between frequency ranges. So I found like learning bass in like by writing bass lines and mixing it and editing and things. I just learned how complex instruments are essentially.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if you're doing something really simple on them, like the way they interact with coming out of your speakers or your headphones or whatever, and the way you hear them and the way you play and how sensitive all those things are were like really important. And people try to teach you this, but for me, like I just had to like do it myself and make mistakes.
Yeah. Did you were you taught at all? Did you take lessons?
I learned piano when I was a kid.
Tell me about that.
Okay, well, so I'm half Chinese, which you might be like, why the fuck is that relevant? But it's relevant because so when I used to live in Newcastle upon Tyne in England, which is like up north with the Geordies, like, you know, NUFC or whatever. How are the lads? Back then, my mum has four sisters. They're all around the world and stuff. Like at the time, like there was some in the US, some in Australia, some in the UK. Sorry, not in the UK, and then in Hong Kong. And then one of my aunties sent her eldest daughter to come live with us to like go to school basically and get a like British education. The reason why this is relevant to like why I learned piano is because she was learning piano, so we got a piano so she could keep learning. And she was like the most shit hot, amazing pianist. Well, I mean, I didn't know anything. I was like, you know, like 8 years old or something. And I was like,
right.
wow. And she's like, you know, grade 10, 11 or something already. Like she's playing Bach and stuff, like however you pronounce it. And like she was amazing. And so when my parents were like, you should learn an instrument, I was like, I want to learn piano. And then like it wasn't super fun, to be honest. No, I got lessons like from a teacher and stuff. It's like an old English lady. But I found it like really stressful because I did the formal exams and stuff. And that is really stressful, just like being put on the spot with like a stranger. But you're still in your teacher. I was in my teacher's living room whilst doing the exam.
Yeah.
Which
you
is
go
also
through like the Royal
kind of,
Piano Academy or something exams?
I don't know. Yeah, something like that. And then
not from the ballet world. Where
oh, wow.
Royal Ballet Academy. Yeah.
I think it's got that same vibe. I mean, you don't have to wear like tails and stuff. You're just wearing like kids' clothes. It's not too hectic. But then you had to like be able to sing scales. And like I just like had no interest in the singing element. So you just like embarrass yourself. And the other thing is like a lot of the time there's other kids waiting to do their exams like in the hallway. So it's just like, man, this really sucks and it's dragging forever. But anyway, I got to like grade 6 or grade 7. And then when we came back to Australia when I was 13, I kept doing piano lessons, but no more exams for whatever reason. And I had this Russian teacher and she was pretty cool. Like she was disciplined, but like kind of like wanted you to get something out of it. You know, it wasn't just like, you know, do the grade books and get the grades and whatever. And like she gave me one of these like Russian funeral ballads and I was just so into it from like year 10. And then she'd be like, okay, well, should we learn some jazz now? And like she pulls out the jazz chops and I'm like, nah, let's just It's keep doing feeding me the Russian funeral ballads.
Cool.
And I was like, I discovered melancholy from an early age. Let me just say that. So, like my friends are playing in like pop punk bands and stuff. And I'm going to all these shows, but I'm just like playing my funeral ballads and like, sure, I learned like Clocks and The Scientist and whatever. Like,
Yeah. Did you?
the main riffs anyway.
So you would have been reading music at the time as well.
Yeah, I don't read music anymore. I mean, I can like read slowly, but I don't use it in like to do with making music anymore. It's just not necessary. And if it is, I just get someone else to do it.
Did your like parents encourage sort of creative expression, creativity?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's a bit unusual. I think it's unusual when I reflect on it now and I hear like how most people end up making things. Because like we didn't like my parents never listened to music like in the house. Like maybe it's like I don't even think the radio was on. Like if we were driving, like maybe the like classical FM or something would come on. But like my parents like never made music and stuff. Like aren't like artistic in that respect. I think my mum played guitar in like high school, but like there was no instruments at home. And then I don't know. I was always really obsessed with music from like a very young age. I don't really know why.
Where did that come from?
Well, I reckon it comes from the Spice Girls because I grew up in Newcastle from the age of 5 to 13, and like obviously I'm showing my age, but like Spice Girls were like amazing, and they are still amazing. I think time has proven me right in this one. Like the first CD I bought was like I think it was Spice World, the first album. Amazing music, and it's all like mostly Northern soul rhythms.
Yeah,
which is like from like Northern England and stuff. Obviously, I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah,
but like amazing music. Yeah, I was just obsessed with music from like a really young age. Like I used to tape like the radio and stuff to get songs and things. And
what other bands at that sort of?
Well, the first two things I bought were so the same time I bought the Spice Girls album, I bought like a single. Like you used to buy like single CDs of single songs and whatever, and I bought like a Supergrass song. Which I don't know, for whatever reason, like when I was even from like a young age, I didn't care about genre. Like maybe the basic answer to that is like because that was the beginning of like not caring about genre maybe in like society.
Sure.
But maybe not. But maybe it's because I was half Chinese, half English. Maybe, but maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe also like as a kid, you're not really thinking about it.
Yeah. When I started really thinking about it was when we moved back to Australia and I got a library card, and then you could borrow 13 CDs at once. So I borrowed 13 CDs multiple times a week and ripped them all, and I've still got the folders somewhere. And so I would just go through every genre. Like it didn't matter if it was classical music or blues, jazz, like pop.
You're just building out your
like everything. But it was really good because I just didn't have like there was no like real because I was listening to music alone. It wasn't really like scene related or like what. Like sure, like some kids will listen to something cool like Blink-182, and I like Blink-182, but I also like BB King.
Sure.
And like something that was like really informative for me was seeing NERD on TV with their Rockstar video.
Yeah.
Where like this is back when Pharrell was pretty sick, and like he dresses like a skater and he's like in this basketball ring. But like there's like the band Spy Mob was like on that first album, but it's rap music and it's rock and stuff, and like that was game changing for me because Pharrell like. Obviously he's black, but like I was really young and I was like, this guy looks unusual because he's like got quite like I wasn't expecting to talk about like Pharrell's like figure. But, no, he's like quite slender and like had these like fine features,
he's
like
pointy,
quite feminine features.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that guy looks like a fucking weirdo and I look like a fucking weirdo. I did not look like a cool weirdo like Pharrell back then. But I like was like the music was like listening back, it's like way less sensitive than I thought it was. But like that's the nature of being a teenager. But like songs like it goes from like strip joint songs like about like truth or dare to like Like there's that song Provider where it's like from the perspective of like driving a truck, like 9 to 5, whatever the lyric is, like just trying to provide for your family and stuff. And like, you know, trying to not get addicted to crack and stuff, which like obviously some of this stuff goes over your head, but it was like pretty like thoughtful music to me at the time. And musically like had the best of like electronic stuff and rock stuff. And maybe it's because I was like obsessed with Limp Bizkit before that.
Okay.
Like I think maybe it was like a more refined version of like
Sure.
I've been listening to a lot of Limp Bizkit lately though, and
A little more subtle than
that stuff holds up. It's really good.
yeah.
I actually stand by literally every piece of music I've ever listened to.
We should do a Limp Bizkit listening party.
Well, I run to Limp Bizkit. I do,
Ah.
and it's like, oh yeah, running's a big part of my like exercise is important to me, but not in a like, you know, getting jacked kind of way or whatever.
We'll talk about that in a sec. Actually,
But, yeah.
In high school, did you like study music or?
No, no, I did like my like so I did my lessons outside of school once a week, and then after year 10, my mum let me stop because I wasn't enjoying it, and I'd also gotten a job like doing a paper round like twice a week, like once on a weekday and then once on a weekend.
Were you being creative in high school at all? Or?
Like not in high school. Like I would like still play a bit of piano. I definitely wanted to be in a band really badly, but like people weren't asking for pianists at the time. Like there were a lot of people who all of a sudden were bassists, and because it was the easy instrument.
Sure.
And you know, I think it was for the best that I wasn't in a band. But I went to a private school. Like some people are a bit like try to keep it secret whether they went to private or public school or whatever. It's like it's fine. I went to private school. Privilege. What's up? And why did I say that? Oh, because I got voted to be a prefect,
Oh, okay.
which I was like, what the hell? I was not super popular or whatever. Like I got bullied a little bit, but I was not the most bullied. So I was like, this is fine by me.
You're at the Alister Hill
Yeah,
level
so I
on the
was
bully
like,
chain.
man, shit. People not only know me, maybe some of them like me. That is amazing. And like obviously I had like my crew of like little friends and stuff. I think this is like year 10 or 11. Year 10, I think. And so anyway, the point of the story is you had to like meet like the school principal or whatever and tell them like what would you want to do if you were a prefect. And mine was I want to organize like more band concerts, like more band shows. I was like, we need more. Like have them in the playground like all the time. Because like my friends, like, well, they weren't like my closest friends, but some of my friends and then other people's bands like older, they're doing Chili Peppers covers, they're playing Placebo. It's like, it's fucking hot, you know, like Incubus, it's going off. Like all of the dudes duding out. And I was like, this is the best. I love dudes rock. So then the lady,
I feel like you are one step
Well,
away from
this
organizing Battle of the Bands at this
man,
point.
I would have done it. This lady was like, well, we already have bands that play every now and again. So, and she's like, you're half Chinese. So let me give you some context. She's like, you're half Chinese. And then she's like, why don't you want to do something more cultural? Do you speak Cantonese? And I was like, no. So for context, this is like a white lady in like a choingsum, which is like a traditional Chinese dress or whatever. And then she's like got this adopted like Indonesian kid. And she was like, I don't think her vibe would like fly. Maybe it's in today's culture.
Yeah.
But she was giving me this big kind of like pseudo lecture on like basically I'm not Chinese enough, like
Right.
in like you know my identity or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I think because I had a pretty good bullshit radar from early on, I was like, man, fuck that lady. When I walked out, I was like, I don't give a fuck about being a prefect. And so I was like, that's that. But the reason I said that story is like I felt like I knew I wanted to like do music stuff from a very early age. Not necessarily like
When did you start doing like?
organizing gigs and things,
Yeah.
or like making music.
I guess getting into the music industry.
So like after high school, so I did this thing called the International Baccalaureate, which was like basically you just get like great marks even if you're a bit shit, but you had to try really hard. So I was like, I'm good at trying hard, and I'm like not super dim but not super bright. So like maybe I can get a great grade, and you could do like weird things like psych. So I did psychology for 2 years in high school, and I got like a really good grade, and I was like, well, my brain at the time, and rightly so, I think, was literally like, what else am I going to do? I don't want to do fucking economics. When like I had friends in high school who were like going to go study law or like economics or like insert like becoming a doctor, and it's like, at least being a psychologist sounds interesting. And like I loved my classes; they were like tiny and full of weirdos and stuff. It was great. So then I went and studied psych at Macquarie Uni, which I was pretty depressed because I decided to go to Macquarie Uni because none of my friends were there. And it was granted good at psychology, but so is UNSW. So I've just gone to UNSW.
But then suddenly none of your friends are at this.
Yeah, and I'm catching a bus like an hour and a half away. And being isolated was like maybe it's a romantic idea that wasn't like super fun, but it was good for me. But I was also working at a hairdresser's as like one of my first like newspapery around jobs where I'd give people head massages and stuff. And so I'd be working a lot like in the hairdressers and then pass a joint. And so I'd cram all my classes into like 2 days and be there from like 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. and then work the rest of the time. And like I got really good at saving money because like a guy who like I was friends with, but like we went tight, was like, hey, I'm going to South America. Do you want to go? I was like, sure. Because I was like, I need to be disciplined in life. So I saved like 12 grand like in a year just working. Like I was like monastic though. I didn't drink, didn't smoke. I'd allow myself to buy like one Diet Coke at uni. It was like pretty weird. So I was like very like isolating myself kind of thing. But I got like super into playing guitar. So like I think in year 10 or 11, I asked my parents like if I could have a guitar for Christmas, and I like actually specifically wanted an electric one, but they were like, "We'll get you an acoustic." Fair enough. You don't want to listen to that shit. But then I just like saved up my own money from working at the hairdressers and bought like electric from Happy Hockers, and that's when I started like vaguely writing music and learning how to write music. Then like year 12 around year 12. First year uni, one of those old pop punk bands that like my friends were in, they like broke up, and then they started getting super into like shoegaze and stuff. And I discovered like Sonic Youth and like My Little Valentine, and then I tuned my guitar to like open C, and that was like a whole like dimension opening up. And I was like, the guitar sounds fucking amazing to me now, and that was even on an acoustic. And that's when like I really started like writing music, and then the singer guitarist from that old pop punk band and I started our first band, and we like made everything up together. So I'd like write a lot of the riffs and things. I started playing in other open tunings, and then some of the other two people from my high school, we started a band together. And that's when like that was like more towards the end of me doing like an undergrad in psych. And then during that time I was working in a cafe, and I told my parents, I was like, I'm not going to continue with psych. Like, I'm going to take a break, work in a cafe, and I just want to play in a band, make music. They were totally fine with that.
They were supportive of that?
Yeah, because I wanted to drop out or take a break at the halfway point. And my dad did give me a good piece of advice, and he's like, you're delaying now, you're just delaying it. Like, and it's important for you to finish something that you don't, like, I mean, obviously I finished high school, but like, that was optional, if you know what I mean. It's like once you finish it, you've proven something to yourself. And like, maybe it sounds counterintuitive, forcing yourself to finish something you don't like. But I found in life that's really important. Like even with like a song, sometimes it's really important to finish an arrangement of a song, even if you know you're not going to do anything with it, because you can learn something through that process. And for me, like making things is about being disciplined in being in the process of making all the time, but also like having your senses open to like being inspired all the time, which I think for me is a disciplined practice that requires a lot of effort. You know, I'm not like Sisyphus pushing a thing up a hill, but like I have to stay like focused to be able to do that.
Yeah. Let's jump forward a bit and talk about Worlds Only.
Wow, actually, that is very forward.
Well, let's not jump that far forward. Let's talk about your rap album.
That's pretty forward still. Yeah, okay. Now we can talk about that.
And the like, So you,
I made a rap album in lockdown.
yeah. So you had
It was a lot of
Saint
fun.
Leon in the can.
What do you mean in the can?
Like the first album was out, done.
Yeah, like we just had to put it out because I thought it was important to put it out. We didn't like promote it really heavily or anything. Like we never played it live.
You'd done a live. You hadn't done live yet?
We'd played songs from it live, but we never played it live after it came out.
Yeah. And then you decided to make a rap album.
Well, yeah, I always loved rap music, and I've always sampled things. So like I previously had an ambient project that was all around tape loops. That like Sophie, my wife, and I joke because it's like was and probably still is like easily the most like popular thing that I've done. But like for me, like it wasn't that challenging. Like it was interesting to a certain extent, and then I felt like after doing 3 albums of it, it had kind of run its course. But that like kind of like aspect of playing with loops, I wanted to kind of explore something that stretched it a little bit or stretched me a little bit. And so I started kind of putting beats around like just loops basically that I found and made. Because I'd been to Lisbon and I spent like, I bought a lot of records like of like fado music, like traditional Portuguese music when I was there for the purposes of sampling. So I had this idea for like a long time. And then during lockdown, I was like, cool, I'm finally going to do it. And it's also it's a nice and different way to listen to music. And it kind of takes you out of the loop of, mind the pun, of listening to like just whatever's in the ecosystem of like culture at the time.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think anyone's like slapping like fado music at, the Billboard Top 100 or whatever.
But, no. But you're listening at the same time as searching for something.
Yeah, and I started making these loops and I thought it sounded pretty unique. And at the time, because Saint Leon, it's like me and John Boy and Ryan, and it's all kind of, it's complicated in the sense that Ryan's in London. I wanted to do something that had the simplicity of me just doing the tape loop project, but with vocals and arrangement and stuff and like low end, for example, and all of those things. And so I was like, I'll just rap on it myself. And I'm like, there's this Earl Sweatshirt album, some rap songs that like to me sounded like this tape loop like experimental producer called William Basinski, who's like very like big in a small kind of circle, in certain genres or whatever. But it sounded like his kind of tape loop stuff, but in rap music, and that was like so exciting to me. And I was like, I want to kind of just explore that vein, not to like, I mean, I've never been someone to like try to make a career or make money out of things I'm making musically, but I just wanted to like do it for my own interest. And recording your own vocals and like writing lyrics and things was like really helpful with making music with other people, which is not what I wasn't doing it for that reason, but I learned a lot from making.
You found that?
Yeah. And I think it weirdly really informed the bands I've done since, even though musically they're so far from each other.
What was the like process of writing rap for you like?
I'd be very like stream of conscious. I definitely like write lyrics down, but it's just a process of, I had a lot on my mind because a lot had happened in life and things over the past few years. But I quite liked the idea of doing a form of like abstract expressionism, which I feel like is what you're doing when you're producing things instrumentally or playing an instrument. It is abstract expressionism in the sense that it's open to interpretation to the listener. And so I carried that through like lyrically. I mean, I don't know, if somebody read the lyric sheet, they could be like, oh, well, like he says Ziggy there, so I'm assuming that's Ziggy Rama, who he like did a project with at the Opera House. True. But like maybe it's like the tethers in the way like one line fits to the next is more abstract.
Yes, yeah.
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 But yeah, it was really good for me.
Was there a you were getting in the studio by yourself?
Yeah, I had like a attic studio at the time.
Yeah. Was that
I mean, there was a whole period where I was playing with autotune and just driving my girlfriend, now wife, fucking crazy because she'd be on like Zoom drinks with her mates, and then I'd just be like wailing away out of tune, and they'd be like, "Can you like put yourself on mute?"
but you're like in the creative zone.
Yeah, so that was like I went deep into like autotune land for a bit, which was fun, and then yeah. I mean, I have made beats since then, and I just like, I think I missed making things with people.
Yeah. Was that project like creatively interesting for you working by yourself?
I think the spicy factor for me was like putting my own vocals on it. Like that was interesting. Like making loops and things, and like putting together drum breaks and all that. Like, I kind of knew I could do all of that. But once I kind of figured that I could do it, I think it became less interesting. I don't really like working by myself.
That's like something that kind of comes up is that you're sort of moving to the next thing and growth. I guess like technical growth often of like what you can do. Like, is that something you're
Yeah, I don't see myself as a technician. Like there are people who are like so amazing at using an EQ or like patching a synthesizer or something. And that's just like I'm not that person, but I really like having like a wide. It comes back to the like going to the library and taking every CD from every genre. Like I like having a wide understanding of like different music, and then being able to draw from it into specific ideas.
do you feel like that sort of speaks to the becoming a curator and producer as well, like the wanting to learn all of the parts?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can also just be like a bit of an asshole and be like, why shouldn't I do that? You know what I mean? Like, I just thought I could do it for whatever reason.
I mean, why do any of us do anything?
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah, and I just like had to like, I just felt like I could make a positive impact and like do something that would change, make some form of like change. And like originally, like, I mean, there's lots of examples of this. Like, I'm lucky I feel like I have a lot of examples of this, but the most obvious ones to me were like when I was in a more freelancing capacity, like this punk band Royal Headache that had been like trying to get to play the Opera House for years. They'd like broken up and whatever, and then like this is so stupid, but like the cops came for like no reason really, and then it was like on Channel 9 News, and I remember like walking home and like, well, I wasn't walking home. I was walking to my dad's place at 3 a.m. because there's no cabs, and he lived in Surrey Hills, which is closer than where I lived, which is Marrickville. So I literally slept in his closet, like Harry Potter style. And I remember walking home, and I'm like, I've done it. Like I can quit now. And I literally did quit like after that because I was just like, I'd done something that like has changed like the landscape in the institution, like in a weird way, like. And then like I think like programming Wu-Tang was like one of those things.
Tell me about that.
I mean, that's like a really long story, but like we got Wu-Tang to like come out and perform 36 Chambers, and all the members, RIP ODB, he didn't come out, but his son did. That was like, felt like a big achievement. And then like during lockdown, like doing all these like really like nuanced interdisciplinary commissioned work, like because as soon as there was this opportunity to do something without an audience and not having to sell tickets, I was like, well, there's like this interesting like third thing between like the audience at home, the performance on stage, and the screen, and like how can you like meld those worlds a bit more?
Yeah.
And kind of doing stuff with like Ziggy and like doing this like In the Mood for Love show with like Rainbow Chan and Marcus and Eugene was like really fulfilling. And that actually kept me there, I think, longer than I thought I would. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
No, but that's okay. It's
I mean,
did
I
you
always considered that stuff really separate to making music, but the more that I realized that I'm not actually an isolationist at all. Like, I really like making things with people. Um, like, I think it draws on those same like skills, like those that need to like work with people
yeah, and
and to push yourself.
do you obviously like with your music you tend to work with similar people over time and pushing those sort of relationships and growing them, and then you'll move into a new project with different people as well and bring bits and pieces along.
Yeah, it's like I don't think it's that conscious a lot of the time, and a lot of the time the relationships run really far back. Like like I guess like I'll talk about Worlds Only, like which is probably the most recent thing I've been doing. There's like 6 people involved, but the impetus for that was my friend Justin Tam, who used to work at the Opera House like a really long time ago, was living in London for like 5 years or something. And for some reason, we actually both just randomly thought of each other. Like he was literally in my dream. And then we got back in touch and we started talking a lot. And then we were like, oh, we should do some improv stuff together. And then I dislocated my thumb running weirdly. And then I was like, and now is the time that I'm going to play guitar. And so I sent him this like 30-minute long improv guitar thing, and then he did some improv sax. And then that grew into like doing a 6-piece like improvisational group thing with a whole bunch of people with relationships that are some are newer and some were like brand new. And then some were like really old, going back to like 2013.
How did you invite people into that?
It was like the Avengers, exactly like that. Or like insert, like it was, no, actually, like fuck the Avengers. It was Armageddon. Like, you know, Bruce Willis saving the world. It was exactly like that. Because there were a lot of problematic kings in that band, let me
Sure.
tell you.
Did you send out yours and Justin's like original improv kind of play piece?
No. No, not at all. No, the way it happened was, so I was riding my bike to work and then I was listening back to the improv we'd done. And then I heard like a spoken word voice on it, like just in my head. And I reached out to that person and we were going to record and then it didn't happen for whatever reason. And then we were like going to get someone else and we had like this show at this venue, Phoenix Central Park, that we've been talking to them about. And so we kind of had a date.
So you had the venue before the band.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it was like just and me, and it was going to be a spoken word person who was like there were a few different options over time, and some of them were like very well known or very reputable or both in various practices. And then each of the thing didn't work out for whatever reason, but for some reason I didn't take that as a sign of like we shouldn't be doing this. I just knew that in like my vision was maybe a bit different to Justin's. I'm not quite sure what his vision was, but in my head, I was like, there's this Patti Smith album with Kevin Shields from My Bloody Valentine called The Coral Sea that's live, recorded at like whatever in England. And it's just like this impressionistic guitar and she's doing all this spoken word about her old friend Robert Mapplethorpe. And I'm not a huge Patti Smith fan or anything, like no disrespect, but I love that album. And I was like doing something like between that and like ambient music and experimental music, like it'd be really interesting in improvisation. And then I started a show at like FBI Radio around the same time. And so I was going in there a lot. And my wife was like really close friends with Darren, who was working there at the time. And so I was seeing there a lot. And then he had just put out this super experimental, like spoken word storytelling, sound design thing with the show Race Matters. And I listened to it and I was like, oh, I should have just asked Darren. And so he was like, yeah, because you're an idiot, which is true. And so I asked Darren and then like, you know, played a bit hard to get maybe. I don't know. Maybe he didn't. I can't remember. But we joked around about it for a while because we've been friends for a while at that point. And then
How far away was the show, like the date and the venue?
the show
this
like
point?
was. I mean, we got the offer from Phoenix on like a Friday, and then they were wanting to announce on the Monday, which was pretty insane. So by the time like I'm talking to Darren, they'd given us a bit more time. And so this would have been like the Thursday. I moved pretty fast when like I'm on something.
Yeah, Darren playing Hard to Get in my mind was like a 3 to 4 month process.
No. This is like maybe it's a day.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I don't think he actually ever said yes or no. He just
showed up.
I was just like, you're doing it.
Cool.
And you just accepted the role. And then, but it was interesting because like Justin reached out to Jenny, who's performs under the name Witchings, and she was on that thing with Darren with the Race Matters experimental spoken word thing. I assumed Justin knew Jenny. He didn't know Jenny. I think he just liked her music and like basically just like cold messaged her on Instagram. And then Reg I'd known for like a really long time since I worked in a cafe. And I knew he played bass, so I asked him. And then Tom Smith was like a really old friend who, amazing experimental musician, but hasn't really like, never been in a band and always done like very esoteric solo stuff, always like mixing trap beats and stuff for Trackwork Records. And then I just knew he would provide something interesting. So yeah, it just kind of turned into a 6-piece.
Yeah. So what was the, I guess, the driving force behind the creative side of it? What was for improv? How did you put that together?
Well, I felt like a lot of improvised experimental music falls in a certain category a lot of time, in the sense of like the audience have certain expectations, and it's a very niche community that has its own kind of cliches and strengths and not weaknesses, but it can be very closed. And I just wanted to do something that you didn't even have to know whether it was improvised or not. And I felt like exploring spoken word was really interesting. That I felt like was mostly being done in like a shouty post-punk way at the time. And so the idea was to do it in the opposite way of like everything that I've been doing before, of it's all live in the room. And I knew Phoenix could record as well. So I was like, cool, we can record the show and release it as a show. And I wanted to
so
like...
that was always
Yeah, so I wanted to do something that worked in the opposite way most bands work. So I wanted to do something where like all the music's new each time we play. And we record live. And we put that out in some capacity. But, we're not rehearsing every week. Like, it's we go rehearse for like record, whatever, for like a few days, and then that's what we play. And really enjoyed that process. And I think that's extended in the way that we put out music as well. Like with that album, which is called Courage to Detour and Patience to Wait. There's a plug. There you go. I plugged something.
You plugged something.
It was like, why, like, it's pretty weird, and like why were you going to put it on streaming services? Like, they're not designed for like something like this. But also, like, when you think about the music industry at large, like, it's mostly serving like a couple of corporations that have always existed that like don't treat artists well, pay them poorly, don't actually preserve your work so it's easily accessible in the public domain, and constantly like reformatting all the time. So then like I went to something like the Internet Archive, which is just free access and has everything on it, and like has this amazing like bootleg culture that I really found inspiring. And so we released the album on that. So like with Worlds Only, it's about doing everything different, as far as I see it. Like for me personally, but also just doing things outside of like the traditional model of being in a band.
Have you ever had a creative block?
No.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
No,
No,
I
not at
actually
all.
can't really remember at
Yeah.
any time.
All right.
There's
Is
definitely
that
been times where I've like made less,
yeah.
but or times where I haven't like I'm like, oh, what I'm making, like that's a shitty idea or whatever.
Sure.
But no, I've never had a block.
How do you
But
decide?
I feel like there are endless ideas.
Yeah. How do you decide if something is a shitty idea or a idea you want to continue on with?
Sometimes it depends. Sometimes if it's just me like making something, it's either like I'm not feeling like it feels locked in, like it doesn't have room to go anywhere. Even if it's a loop, like loops need to be able to like go on a journey in some kind a lot of the time. Or I don't feel like I'm like doing my collaborators. I feel like I'm doing my collaborators a disservice by presenting them with this thing. Like, and sometimes that's vocalist, sometimes it's something else. Yeah, but a lot of the time it's just an intuitive feeling. Like, I need to feel something from it. I know that sounds really basic, but like I go into tunnel vision like really easily making music, and so if I'm not like excited, like physically, like a lot of time I'm like staring really closely at the screen because I'm like in it. Like if someone taps me on the shoulder, I get like a big shock because I'm like a lot of time I can like lose track of time completely, and I like to work really really fast. And so usually if something's not working, I can't just work fast. Like I like that feeling of I'm just trying to keep up with myself
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
getting the things happening quicker and quicker.
That working fast is like a newer kind of part of things, or
It's definitely newer in the sense of like finishing things much more quickly from when they were conceived. But working fast, I've always worked fast. Like editing up, like even back when I was editing up bass notes onto like a grid, I'd do it super quickly. And like record new parts and just like I need to stay in the mode of excitement. As soon as it's not exciting anymore, I feel like it kind of saps your energy a little bit and saps the energy of like kind of the juju or whatever in the thing you're making.
yeah, the thing that drives you to create.
Yeah. But sometimes like it's just as simple as switching from that thing to starting a new thing or going back to an older thing. Like for example, I've got this project called Deep Phase One with
Yeah, I don't know
my
about
wife
this project.
Sophie. So Sophie is one of the vocalists, and then our friend Sophia, who lives up the road, is also one of the vocalists.
Oh, now I know what this project is. No.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
and like with that, because I'm making all the music again for the first time in a while, it's like that requires a certain discipline to stay excited. Like I took a big break from it to do all this world's only stuff, and I'm finding it like I was finding it a little bit tricky to get back into it. But then a new project popped up, and then getting back into the tools to get like Pro Tools again in that way has got me excited to get back into it and continue that work.
With the like doing stuff live, do you have a sort of specific process or idea behind doing things live that
Yeah, look really cool. No, I don't know. I think it's like I like to be like, no, looking cool doesn't matter, but like I need to be like I need to feel good in like in myself to go on stage, and that's like literally waking up every day. So like I look ridiculous, but like I like have to wear lots of layers of clothes and things, and like I like to just feel protected. What was the question again?
just the sort of like process or kind of idea behind doing live work?
Oh yeah, so with the live stuff, I like to put on a show, like, and whether that's like for Worlds Only, that's 6 people standing around like a table in a circle, and like it's kind of ritualistic, but no one's like being like Nick Cave, like or like Jerry Lee Lewis, like no one's like being a pop performer to the crowd, but that is a certain type of show that is like I think like people found it hypnotic from what I've spoken to people about it. And then there's like the type of show where like you're always drawing on different ideas. So like if it's a more electronic show, say, like we're developing a show at the moment, like sometimes I'm inspired by like the musical arrangements and that informs like things visually. So musically on something that we're developing, like I was like frequency range, I want it to be like super bottom end and then like lots of space for the vocal and for like visual frontman performance and then like badass guitar stuff. And then that kind of lends itself to more of like a hip hop method, like a traditional hip hop method of just like minimalism on stage. But there's a certain swagger to that. So then I started thinking like, okay, well, I want my setup to be minimal. And then, so like, you know, there's endless possibilities, but like actually just having like a small MIDI keyboard and like some electronic instruments is like the way to go with this. Because it makes me figure out what is going to have the maximum impact with the least, which is like, I find usually ends up going somewhere interesting, if not going somewhere great.
Is there a live show that you've seen someone else do that like speaks to you in a like blows you away kind of type of thing?
Like just generally?
Yeah.
Um,
Or a live show you worked on back in the day?
I mean, the best show I've ever seen, it's hard to say. I mean, one of the most like a show that like made an impression on me was seeing Swans for the first time, and the Necks actually supported them. So Tim Wynn and I, we didn't know each other back then, but obviously he was at the show, so his recollection is pretty funny because I was working in a cafe, and then this lady would come in, like her brother was friends with Thor Harris, who plays like the hammers and shit, and he's a percussionist in Swans. She's like, hey, and like this woman is like North Shore lady, at least at the time, like this is years ago, North Shore lady, like, I don't know, like just done yoga or something. So when she mentioned Swans, I was like, it like wasn't what I expected. It wasn't how
Sure.
I knew her.
Yes, the out of context.
And so I was like, I've heard of Swans because I was in a Sonic Youth and stuff, but like I wasn't super across them in what they did. So I was like, she's like, do you want to come? I was like, yeah, for sure. Sounds great. And the next was supporting. So anyway, we go to the Metro and she like takes me backstage. We meet Thor and the guitarist. I think his name's Norm. And then like the first thing they ask is like, where can we do like yoga like in the morning? Where's a good spot? And like I'm not a yoga person, but I was like, I think you should go to the Botanic Gardens if you're gonna like get up early like and watch sunrise. Like, it feels like a good spot, right?
Yeah.
And it was like they were into it, whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, I like had this nice interaction with these like lovely, sensitive yoga doing dudes, and then watched the Necks, which was like pretty fucking like pretty abstract jazz.
Yes.
In the Metro.
Improvised.
Well, I know they're not jazz, but like
Yeah.
improvised, drony, like repetitive music. And I was like, there's hardly anyone in the room. And I'm just standing there by myself. And I was like, I could like go home now and be satisfied. The person who I knew from the cafe, she left like super early. I think she just wanted to say hello.
Okay.
So I was just there by myself. And then Swans came on and like it was just like so they gave so little fucks about like what was happening in the outside world of music. Like the way they make music and the way they perform is just like it's like this enclosed methodology and like super badass. It's just like the way that they're like stretching time just by pure repetition and intensity. I just thought it was amazing. And they're all like super, like most of them were like pretty old dudes as well. And pretty like, they've like lived a lot. Especially Norm, the guitarist, like that guy, like he's seen shit, you know? And I just thought that was like, like there was like, even though it was like really like intense and aggressive, like there was still like artifice to it and like it had its own like integrity. Like integrity is a big thing for me. Like I don't really care about authenticity because like I just feel like it's like a weird term, but like they performed with like integrity and they were performing like to each other. And then there's like Michael Giro, like Mr. Swans or whatever. Like his whole Preacher Man thing was just like really like drawing on like really old school, like almost like Elvis style performance and just doing it in a different way. And I just thought it was amazing. But like this slide, you could just stare at the slide guitarist. Like he's just like looks like I don't know. He looks like he's like out of Breaking Bad or something.
Yeah,
you know?
like every person
yeah,
in the show is performing at a
yeah,
level.
and he's just standing there playing slide, but he just has this mean mug face and like yeah, it's just like music, and they were playing all new music as well. The thing from the album The Seer, so they were like touring their first album that they reunited over. Which I listened to and I liked it. But like once The Seer came out, like I recognized the music that they played. I was like, oh, this is the album. Like,
Okay.
this is amazing.
Yeah.
And I've seen them since, but like it just made such a huge impression on me, and not in a way that I wanted to copy them. Just that the thoughtfulness and discipline that it required to execute something with that particular vision was like really important to me.
Is there a difference between how you prepare to go on for Worlds Only to do a live show versus how you prepare to be in the studio?
Yeah. Well, when you say be in the studio, you mean like making music?
Yeah, like making. Yeah.
Yeah, because so with a show, I learned really early on reading the Sonic Youth book that Steve Shelley didn't eat like 3 or 4 hours before the show. And like before that, like I was like, I'd eat like a fucking butter chicken curry like an hour before going on stage, and you're like,
This was a bad idea.
Yeah, like what are you expecting? Like, you know? So I started like I just used his methodology and I was like, okay, I feel like really clear, but also like actually being a little bit hungry made me perform more aggressively in a good way. So I just found like I was more sensitive to what was going on. And then like when I was touring and stuff, you have a little less control over like things, but I'd find just doing a little bit of exercise would help create that rawness that I needed. And like,
do you warm up? Do you like breathe before the show?
no. I mean, obviously, like I do a bit of breathing. No, I like skipping. Like if I need to do some exercise, or whatever. But ideally, I'm able to go for a run in the morning, get to the venue like with heaps of time or whatever. Yeah, like no eating like 3 hours before a show, maybe some apple or something. And I need to know what I'm going to be wearing like well before. A lot of time, like well before the day. Like I had this funny thing when I was working with Ziggy where from the first time I met him up until the end of the show, I wore the same thing every time, like same t-shirt, same jeans, same shoes, same jacket. And I was like, because I want to be a blank canvas for him at each time he met me. So he can just like think clearly and stuff.
What was working with Ziggy like?
Great. I mean, he makes you feel better because I feel like I can monologue with the best of them. But Ziggy is on like a whole other level where like he has this like stream of conscious way of talking where everything he says is incredibly intelligent. It might be like seem completely unrelated to whatever like if there's an agenda or like a reason that you're trying to like tackle something. It might seem unrelated, but it actually is all related. And like I actually am trying to compliment like the thoughtfulness in
The
which
dots connect.
in which he approaches his practice and how every aspect of the way he lives his life comes out through his practice. All of that is really important, and eventually he'd get somewhere that invariably is not where you're thinking things were going, but it would be infinitely more interesting and like artistically excellent. I found working with Ziggy like to be amazing. Like, my wife's actually worked with him more than me at this stage, which I will obviously take full credit for. But like, Ziggy is, I think sometimes people can get intimidated by young people, like obviously this is relatively speaking, but young people who have such like clear vision, but also are so talented. And like, it was really clear to me, like, this artist makes excellent work. So I'm going to make it really obvious that I can make a lot of things happen.
Sure.
And like, most of the time I'm going to be able to say yes. Sometimes I'm going to have to probably say no. Yeah. So yeah, like programmer / producer.
Yeah.
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 And
so like giving him that sort of confidence that for you as the producer could make things happen.
Yeah, and like help him, like, think as big and like artistically, like match his enthusiasm, so he is unafraid, or the little voice inside everyone's head disappears from his, and so if he has a big idea, sure, we might not be able to make it happen, but it might lead somewhere interesting, and for him to be able to like channel it as easily as possible.
Yeah. How do you navigate that as a producer?
For me, it's like similar to like making music in something. It requires a lot of personal discipline for me. Like for me, I think one of my strengths as a producer is staying incredibly calm, and not taking up too much space. And like, that sounds silly because like visually, like, I like don't look invisible, but I feel invisible because I feel incredibly comfortable. And for me, like doing things like consistently exercising keeps me calm, and having an artistic practice keeps me really calm. And I do think with producing, if you have like, not all producers have to be like this, obviously, but for me, having a practice is like really important because it helps you never forget the perspective of what it's like being the artist in the room. And I think it's like a grave mistake when I'm not trying to like, name names or whatever, but like sometimes you can feel hard done by, working in an institution, or like, you feel like you're the one working the hardest on the show. But sometimes it's easy to get lost in that. And at the end of the day, like, it's always the hardest being the artist because all the pressure is on them, and they have to try to have clarity of vision. And a lot of the time, making something in the world, there's all these other forces and distractions that, or things that pop up just in life that are like, almost like little tests that are testing whether you have clarity of vision or not. And so I think, as a producer, a lot of it's just trying to like cut through things and make them simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
And being calm as fuck.
I'm happy to end it there.